Okay, welcome to the December 2025 Cabinet meeting for the London Borough of Hammersmith and Fulham. It is the last Cabinet meeting of 2025. I hope you had a positive 2025. Personally, I can't believe it's flown by so quickly. Welcome everybody if you're tuning in, and if you are here in the audience, you by osmosis agree to be filmed and take part in any material we may put onto YouTube. If a fire alarm goes, please leave. It won't be a test, and you'll leave by that exit and this exit and be escorted to the doors over here accordingly. I'm now going to introduce the Cabinet, starting with my far left, Florian.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Verdier, Cabinet Member for Public Realm.
Good evening, my name is Bora Kwan. I'm the Councillor and Cabinet Member for Adult Social Care and Health.
Hello, Councillor Frances Ume, Cabinet Member for Housing and Homelessness.
Thank you very much. Councillor Rowan Ree, Cabinet Member for Finance and Reform.
Good evening, everybody. I'm Councillor Wesley Harcourt, Cabinet Member for Climate Change and Ecology.
Good evening, I'm Councillor Zarar Kayom, Cabinet Member for Enterprise and Skills.
We have Bram Kenneth, who's standing in as acting Chief Executive. So thanks very much for doing that, Bram. And we also have Grant Degg, who's the Director of Legal Services. I have apologies from Councillor Alex Sanderson, and apologies from Andrew Jones, Councillor Andrew Jones, and Councillor Rebecca Harvey. And I would like to, as ever, welcome our very own Councillor Adroni Elford, and who is here from the Conservative group, and once again thank her for her attendance. Okay, we have a busy meeting tonight. I will start with you've already had the apologies for absence. So item number 2 then, declarations of interest. Are there any? Item number 3 then, minutes of previous meeting. I know you've all read them. Is there anything matters arising from that? Are you happy that they are signed? I take that as agreement. Thank you. Item number 4 then, to Councillor Ree for revenue budget review, month 6. Over to you.
Thank you very much, Leader. I'm afraid you're going to have to hear an awful lot from me this evening. So this first report is the month 6 monitoring report for the revenue budget. Just looking at how we've gone about spending the budget agreed earlier in the year. I'd ask the Cabinet to note any changes, and I would also ask anyone watching to be aware of any overspends and all the mitigation measures that have been put in place. As Councillor Alford has turned up once again, I'll preempt a question on the HRA. The HRA, we're fairly confident of the position that we're in. I think we're in a far healthier position than we were in this time last year or a year ago. Where there is spending now, a lot of it is to rectify historical matters. And we have a number of contingencies and unallocated contingencies as well within the HRA. So any overspend, we're confident, will be made up before the end of the year. Thank you.
Any points to that matter? Councillor Alford.
Firstly, can I say I'd like to thank Mr. Rochford for a very good briefing I've had on the HRA account. So you will be spared my comments on the HRA account tonight, just briefly. But as you know, I'm always very concerned, and I do understand that it's historic, but I am worried, and I will say again, and I don't think anybody's going to disagree me, about the ambulance chasers, putting that in. So, sorry, that's fine. I do have sort of 3 questions. Sure. One is it's actually on public realms, it's the garden waste. Do we have an explanation, apart from the fact that less people are subscribing? Do you think it's because perhaps it's so highly priced that they are ducking out? I'll give all the 3 questions in so you can...
Should I answer that one? No, we don't think it's that reason. I think we, the history of garden waste was, and probably you, Wesley, and I might be the only people who remember that were here on the council at the time, but as residents we'll all remember that there was these giant skips that were placed around the borough and got they got ended, I think, by the last Labour administration up to 2006, or was it your administration in the early days? I can't remember. But they were ended largely because of abuse by private builders who would dump lots of their waste into these giant skips, which is now the garden waste. So that ended. Then there was a charge introduced by, I think, the last Conservative administration, and that quickly came to, didn't work. And it's quite a low charge, I think. And then it went to there was no garden waste service. And so the only way anyone could ever have lost their garden waste was to wrap it in a black plastic bag, hide it in the rubbish, and therefore hope someone would not notice it when it was picked up, because we wouldn't take garden waste under any other circumstances other than by mistake, because there was no garden waste service. So this is a brand new service which aimed to compete with the private sector, which is considerably more expensive. And it fitted into our environmental policy of essentially trying to cut our refuse going to landfill. And there's many reasons for that, not least we're aiming to be the most environmentally positive council in the country. And that's why we introduced food waste and saw garden waste as a key part of it. But the other reason is the Western Riverside Waste Authority has extortionate prices at £165 per tonne. And, you know, to give you an example, elsewhere it's £65 per tonne. And so there are good, solid reasons for doing that. Launching a new service, you know, for, you know, a bargain price of, I think, £90 a year, is it? £95 a year. It's buying much, much cheaper from the private sector, but people haven't taken it up for all sorts of different reasons. In the numbers that we'd hoped for, we're making another push this year. But it is something I think all of us as councillors would want to encourage, because it's extremely environmentally friendly. The waste that's generated goes to create compost and other environmental materials. And it's part of our overall plan. But added to that, £90 a year, it's quite cheap compared to what other options are. So we're doing some studies to see what we can do to better market it. But I think a new service launch like this, it will take a while to get going, and that's my explanation of it.
That's an interesting answer. Can I go on to my next question, which is the parking? Again, you've got lower income than estimated. Why is it lower than expected?
Well, as you know, we're trying to deter traffic from cutting through the borough. So as much as we respect our residents' rights to drive their cars, and indeed to have visitors from Fens, or indeed our businesses' rights to get visitors by car, what we don't want is to be a cut through from people coming in from either the M4 or A3 corridor, polluting our streets unnecessarily. As you know, the toxins in the air cause a variety of health problems, from dementia to heart disease to shrunken child organs. And so there are lots of reasons why we would want to do that. But clearly, if people if people aren't cut, so that we think that may have had an effect. Secondly, there is less people using cars. We've made a huge push on extending cycle lanes, encouraging active travel, and making it safer to walk around and cycle around and use other forms of transport. And we think more people now take those measures. The numbers have gone up significantly, which means they're not driving their cars, and some of our environmental messaging is getting through. But as you will remember from your days in administration, we're not interested in parking revenue for the revenue's sake. Parking revenue is purely there as a way of paying for the highway maintenance and making car users, no matter what type of car they have, contribute to the roads that they rely on to drive their heavy vehicles on. So it looks like it's been success from our environmental measures.
So I could come back on. Yeah, you say it's successful. I mean, the thing that is concerning me, and I'll keep this brief, is yes, you may be deterring people from coming and parking, but you're also deterring people from shopping and using our we have lovely shops, but so many have closed down. You've just got to drive or walk around the borough or cycle around the borough or in any other form of transport around the borough. And I do worry about the level of shops that are closed. And I think personally, you know, as I do use a car, and I think, Yeah, and I live in the borough, but it's not easy, you know, and particularly with some of the regimes you've instigated are actually driving away people.
Well,
And
I appreciate some people will need to use cars, and certainly we're not out to stop people using cars who need to use cars. We're trying to take the low-hanging fruits, people who might think, I'll hop in the car, drive around the corner to a supermarket, when actually they could walk for 10 minutes and slightly longer journey, but do it with less disadvantage for the environment. So that's what our measures are about. We're certainly not out to deter people from driving their cars. Just on shops, I think what we have to do in these populist times is to look at the facts, because if you ask a lot of people, there's an awful lot of hearsay floating around. And without doubt, the high street is being challenged. You see that if you go outside of London, we've boarded up high streets, lost post offices, a pub closing every week, charity shops, and the once great high street suffering, whether it's from online shopping or the pandemic or cost of living crisis, all these different factors, meaning that people shop differently to how they're used. What I would say, if you take, one of the areas where we've done the most active changes, which is the South Fulham cleaner neighbourhood, there are 37 new shops. So there's been not a loss of shops, there's been an increase in shops. So whereas some carpet shops might have disappeared, it's been replaced by restaurants, cafes, and different flats like that. In fact, I noted this week that there's a new French restaurant opening up on Wandsworth Bridge Road related to the French restaurant. Is it Café Citron in Shepherd's Bush Road? And it's an excellent restaurant. And they, even in these troubled times, they're opening a new restaurant now in Wandsworth Bridge Road because it's more pedestrian friendly. So you do get a change, but we've actually seen an increase in local shops. And one of the missions of this local authority is to try and increase local shopping. And you will remember that last Saturday was Shop Local, where we closed North End Road. Every time we've closed North End Road, which again blocks all cars, sometimes they do a month's takings in one single day. And that's the least of what they've been doing. And we put on acrobats and bans and extend licenses. And so, we're trying to take measures to encourage people to shop in these tiny, small, independent local shops. And some of it's working. Marks and Spencer's has just opened in Fulham Broadway, new restaurants open, and other shops opening on Wandsworth Bridge Road. We're taking a series of action to bring wealth into Uxbridge Road and Askew Road. And the Civic Campus will the aim of the Civic Campus is to pull Chiswick High Road down into mid Hammersmith, pull the Lyric Square up into mid King Street, and to crush what we think is the blight of King Street, which is the gambling shops, the payday loan shops, the pawn shops, the other things that just are out of keeping with the type of vision we have for a revitalised borough. So it's certainly not that the parking thing is limiting it. As you see in King Street, IKEA has completely changed it. And I think we will continue to take measures to encourage private investment and put public investment where it can help do that. Parking is one of those things that, as less and less people drive, more and more young people don't have a car or even can drive. It becomes less of a means of transport. It's more important that we find other ways of getting people in.
I've got one more question. I would say that I've had a very, very good briefing on this. So,
Yeah.
But I think it would like to just air it. Is I notice that we have a tremendous strain on our temporary accommodation, and that, however hard, and I would pay tribute to our staff. So this is not an attack on any staff, but that how are we going to stem the tremendous tide we've got? That I don't see how we're actually going to manage to stem that tide.
Well, we are managing, but you're extremely wise to raise the spectre of a serious problem. I think Hastings, the council, announced that it might be going into special measures, certainly looking at Section 114 notice because of the temporary accommodation budget. It simply isn't sustainable to have families placed into temporary accommodation at vast expense. I know a lot about this because I wrote a report on it for the Labour Party, but also I remember 20 years ago saying I thought this would happen if we ended up just buying private sector, renting private sector rents. We would cause a bubble in the market. which is what I told the government in 2005, and that's exactly what has happened. We should have bought those properties instead, and then now we'd have an asset which we could have maintained ourselves and had much cheaper housing. So the problem is something that goes back a long way. It affects all councils across the United Kingdom, and it is a serious challenge to council budgets everywhere. I would pay tribute to Councillor Ree, and to Councillors Ume, who have been way ahead of the curve. I think they saw that problem on the horizon, which has meant that we've been able to take a series of measures mitigating it. Not least, we've got 17,000 properties being built, which Councillor Jones tells me per square kilometre is probably the most in the country. And added to that, over 35% of them are affordable, which is a record really for this current market. So in terms of tackling long-term housing problems, that's what we're doing, is just simply building more, and that will in turn reduce the demand. But given the sheer scale of demand at the moment, it's a genuine problem, and we're in serious conversations with the government about the need to act on this.
I think it's what I
Sorry, yes. You may remember at the last Cabinet meeting, we had a discussion about the council's new housing company. One of the main roles of the company is going to be to provide additional accommodation for those who are currently in the temporary accommodation system, as well as bringing back some of our more complex void cases.
I appreciate all that's being done, so I'm not being negative about that. I'm just concerned that for some reason it's still sort of, the tide is still advancing, no matter what very wise steps are being taken, and how aware, however receptive are the government to these concerns?
Well, I think the government has been receptive. It's adjusted some of its formula to take that into account in recent months, but I think there's more work to be done. And look, I don't resent you asking these questions at all. They are exactly the questions that an opposition should be asking, and they are one of the things that keep us awake at night. So we're not going to tell you it's all resolved. What I can tell you is we're ahead of most councils, and we'll keep taking straightforward and sometimes very creative measures to stay ahead. And let's not forget that the people who are often needing those temporary accommodation properties are extremely vulnerable people, victims of domestic violence, people who've had terrible life chances to date, people in the worst possible circumstances that we'd imagine for any of our loved ones. So it is part of the social yoke that holds us all together as one people. But the system hasn't worked for a very long time. The government's been in office for about 15 months. It's taken some measures to begin to fix it, but actually fixing such a gargantuan problem is going to take, I think, time as well as money and policy changes. And at the moment, we haven't had enough time to get ahead of the demand. Thank you very much. Okay, if there's no more questions on that, I'll move on to, I'll ask, does everyone agree? Thank you very much. And I will then move on to the next item, 5.
Thank you very much, Leader. This is the second quarter monitoring report for the council's capital budget. As part of our capital budget, we're building a better borough here in Hammersmith and Fulham, whether that's through economic regeneration, whether it's through better, affordable and greener houses, or through the expansion of our CCTV network, keeping our residents safe. As of the second quarter, they're forecast to have spent around just over 270 million pounds.
Any questions? Okay. Thanks very much. Is that agreed? Item number 6.
Thank you very much. The thing that everyone's been waiting for, the mid-year Treasury Management Strategy Review. As you will see, the council is managing its finances in a prudent way, particularly around our longer-term borrowing. You'll see we are meeting our prudential indicators as set out in the management strategy at the start of the year.
Any questions on that? In which case, is that agreed? Thank you. Can I ask the Cabinet to note item number 7, key decisions list?
Noted.
And can I thank everyone for attending? That is the end of the meeting. And may I take the opportunity to wish everyone a Merry Christmas and all the very best for a prosperous and successful 2026.